Rachel, I'm not seeing Councillor Christian, Councillor Shoemaker. Are they on just in a different?
Councillors Shoemaker and Scott are entering the meeting right now. I haven't seen Councillor Christian or Dufour.
We are live.
And we're live on Shaw.
Okay. I'm just going to give Shoemaker, and there's Councillor Scott, and then I will just adjust Councillor Shoemaker in here so I can see him. Okay, and you'll let me know when Councillor Christian shows up, because he'll be on a different screen because we have so many guests that are visual that they're not all the councillors are on all my first screen, so I can't see them all. Okay, so I want to welcome everybody to our meeting. I want to get the meeting underway because we have some guests here that are going to be leading into a presentation that we want to get to. Madam Clerk, if you can call the meeting to order, please.
Under agenda item 1, I have a motion by Councillors Dufour and Bruni, resolved that the minutes of regular meeting of January 25, 2021 be approved.
All in favor? Approved.
Under agenda item 3, declaration of pecuniary interests, I have no one declaring any conflicts so far.
Council, are there any conflicts not indicated to the clerk? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Agenda item 4, a motion by Councillors Dufour and Nero, resolved that the agenda for February 8, 2021 City Council meeting as presented be approved.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
That will take us to proclamations and delegations. And under agenda item 5.1, the 2020 Heritage Award is given to Guy Traficante with the Algoma Conservatory of Music at 75 Huron Street, and Tony Porco, Machine Shop at 83 Huron Street.
Is there any additional information or presentations that's going along with that, Madam Clerk? I don't have any material on my side.
No, and I understand that the awards were, that there was a news item in December when the committee selected those award winners.
Okay. So just recognize Mr. Traficante and Mr. Porco for their good work at 75 Huron Street and 83 Huron Street collectively. Congratulate them on the award. So thank you.
And under agenda item 5.2, National Heritage Week, there is a proclamation.
I have that proclamation and I will read it now. Whereas since 1973, the Natural Trust of Canada designates the National Trust of Canada designates the third Monday in February each year as Heritage Day. And whereas Heritage Week runs from February 15th to February 21st, 2021, with the theme Resiliency, relying on our heritage foundations to hold strong and help us pivot in a changing present for the well-being of our future generations. Whereas Heritage Week provides an opportunity to celebrate heritage in all of its forms, cultural and natural, architectural, archaeological, and collections. For it is these tangible touchstones of the past that can root us in a place with our diverse traditions and our cultural expressions. Whereas our shared heritage and history in all forms has the power to bring people together and create a sense of belonging. Intangible heritage, language, tradition, rituals, music, dance, storytelling, and more is at the heart of family and community. Whereas Sault Ste. Marie wishes to remember those who have helped shape our identity and who have forged a place in the history of our community. Now therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim the week of February 15th to February 21st, 2021 as National Heritage Week in the City of Sault Ste. Marie. Thank you.
Under agenda item 5.3, Citizens Helping Addicts and Alcoholics Get Treatment, we have Dr. Paul Hergott, Lisa Foggia, Connie Rayner, and Rhonda Lee on the call. And before their presentation, there is a video that will be shown.
I want to welcome all of you to our meeting tonight. I want to appreciate the time that you're giving us and the presentation that you're going to give. I want to thank you for all of your work advocating on behalf of many people in our community who need assistance and support. So we look forward to your presentation. Dr. Hergott, I welcome you to introduce the group here with you, and I will give you the floor.
I think we're going to start with the video and then I'll get into the actual presentation.
Very good. Okay, so we will move to the video.
Are we?
My son came to the side door and he was sitting at the side door on the porch and he was crying. And he put out his arm and he said, "Mom," he goes, "I'm in big trouble." And he had track marks all down his arm. And that's when my world changed.
Wayne got a job at the steel plant and was doing very well. He's got a daughter, had a baby on the way, and we knew nothing about the drug issues in the Sioux. I was like oblivious to any of the, wasn't in my mind. I never thought any of my kids would get into what's going on here in the Sioux. When I did find out, Wayne had died.
There's no program at the detox at Sioux Area Hospital. There's no program, there's no planning, there's no aftercare, there's no talking to parents of the addicted. I just picked her up and took her. Didn't see anybody, didn't speak to anybody, nobody spoke to me. And I just brought her home. And from that day forward, we took her every morning to go get her Suboxone. And when she had to detox, she detoxed here. It was the worst experience I've ever been through. I have never seen anybody in that condition. I've never seen her in that condition. Screaming, tortured by the pain of her body, vomiting, nauseated, headache. I knew that it was a disease, because when somebody goes through something like that, why would you want to use again if you're thinking with your brain?
I think for me, being in the position of chief of this community, obviously I hear from a lot of the families. I can see within my own community how a lot of the members are dealing with, you know, that kind of situation within their lives. And again, it just doesn't reflect with the family itself, but it affects the entire community, right? And beyond that, I mean, even as a citizen next to our brother and sister here in Sault Ste. Marie, is that you see that on some of the streets. You know, you see non-Indigenous people, you know, dealing with addiction. You hear it on, you know, some of the stories that people share. Like, this is not just a one race issue. This is a world issue.
I hear a lot of times, for example, we need to clean up downtown. Well, cleaning up downtown, it's like people as if they're not people. You clean streets with trucks. You don't clean up the people of downtown. You know, to suggest that there's no funds there, I've seen so much money wasted that would make people's heads spin. And if it was put into the right areas, this would be an investment that would come back to the government many times over. This is one area where it's not just funding social programs and you kind of walk away. This is an investment, in my opinion, because the cost otherwise to our community and society will far outweigh the initial cost of funding that they're suggesting they don't have.
We're going to lose a whole generation of kids, my child, that didn't have to die because the help didn't come fast enough. There was no help to be given. And I believe Tia would have survived. She survived up until now. And she abused drugs for 15 years. And just the waiting. So you give them enough rope, they're going to hang themselves.
And when people ask for help, it has to be now. It has to be now. It's not like, you know how devastating it is when you're having, like, you know, a mom crying or a brother crying because all of a sudden, like, their child or their brother or their sister or their parents are sick and we can't get them the help they need.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have with me tonight 3 of those mothers that you just saw who have lost children to the ravages of addiction. My name is Paul Hergott, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of citizens helping addicts and alcoholics get treatment. Thousands of us who have come together in only a couple of months call ourselves CHAT, a grassroots group lobbying for a comprehensive strategy, a full-scale treatment facility to deal with Sault Ste. Marie's addiction crisis. As we have just seen, the stories are endless, the pain unending, and the cost immeasurable. I don't believe there is anyone here this evening who has not been affected in some way by alcohol or drug addiction. People with addiction have a disease that requires medical treatment. We must remember that these are sick people who are doing bad things. They are not bad people doing bad things. Addiction must be treated as a medical disease, not a blight on our community. Therefore, like all people with a disease, they need medical treatment with dignity and respect. Those who use drugs and alcohol are not just those visibly marginalized and living in poverty. The majority of people suffering from addiction are not visible. They are working and living among us every day. The lack of facilities and care has brought us to a breaking point. Sault Ste. Marie has the highest opioid death rate in Ontario. Algoma Public Health estimated that 60 people would die in 2020 in Sault Ste. Marie from the opioid overdoses. Alcohol-related deaths also ravage our city. These are harder to track because the cause of death is usually attributed to liver or heart disease. Crime rates continue to rise. Impaired driving, property crimes, thefts, violent assaults, and murder. The local Crown has 6 murders and 2 attempted murders before the courts at this time. They are all drug-related. At least 102 firearms were seized in 2020. As well, last year, close to $1 million worth of dangerous drugs were seized. Sault Ste. Marie Police Chief Hugh Stevenson tells CHAT that 80% of calls they receive are mental health and addiction related, the greater number being related to drugs. The police budget is around $30 million annually. Do the math. This is not just about death. It's about quality of life. Look around. You will see ravaged people, devastated families, and a community in despair, discarded needles, plummeting property values, sex trafficking, family breakdown, job loss, organized crime, and gang activity. Add to that the cost of responding to the civic emergency, police, ambulance, healthcare, the justice system. A continuum of care is desperately needed. Most communities in the North have a residential treatment center. We are the only community without a proper residential withdrawal management facility or a 28-day treatment center. Currently, we send our most vulnerable citizens elsewhere to access withdrawal and treatment, places where they have no family or support network. Having to leave the community may prevent someone from reaching out for help. This is especially true for single-parent homes. Figuring out aftercare is done on their own when they return from treatment. The wait for publicly funded treatment centers is currently 3 to 4 months. While the affluent can spend $20,000, $30,000, or $40,000 to get their loved ones into private facilities, others like Rhonda with us tonight are forced to sell their homes and belongings. The final insult is the cost of treatment is taxed. Until our full-scale treatment facility is operational, Sault Ste. Marie requires an adequate number of safe beds where people can stay while awaiting transfer to an out-of-town rehabilitation facility. CHAT's #1 priority is to see our old detox, which closed in 2020, replaced with a new 20-bed residential medical withdrawal facility. The current makeshift detox at the Sault Area Hospital is woefully inadequate, and the screening process for admission goes against the whole philosophy of people self-admitting. In 2019, the Sault Ste. Marie and Area Drug Strategy Report was completed and released. It contained recommendations very similar to ours, yet nothing happened. Likewise, in 2010, the LHIN created a local group and funded them to the tune of $250,000 to look into the delivery of mental health and addiction services in Sault Ste. Marie. After 1 year, a 187-page report, the LHIN suggested merging all mental health and addiction services. They found fragmentation of care being given in silos, and that the focus needed to be client care. The recommendations were never followed through on because of the cost implications for the LHIN and the refusal of some of the major healthcare providers to cooperate. The status quo is no longer acceptable. The time has come to stop doing studies that repeatedly produce the same recommendations. The time has come to implement a strategy that includes, but is not limited to, in-town treatment. We need a medical withdrawal clinic immediately and a 28-day rehabilitation facility. We need safe beds, a supervised consumption site, increased access to the RAM clinic, increased Canadian Mental Health Association accessibility. We need increased accessibility to the East Street Addiction Clinic. In closing, I ask on behalf of everyone victimized by addiction in our community, how much was a life worth in 2020? How much will a life be worth in 2021? All levels of government need to take action now. We need more money to support the existing clinics, caregivers, and programs that are currently operating. We need to expand our existing clinic hours and days of operation. We need to break the barriers for people getting help at the hospital emergency and be able to guide them into care. CHAT supports Council's Resolution 8.1 passed January 25th, requesting a residential treatment center for Sault Ste. Marie. I asked Mayor and City Council to show their support for what CHAT is requesting this evening so that we can move forward as a community with one goal and one purpose: to save lives. I would like to thank all the wonderful people who have joined CHAT, those devastated by addiction, yet brave enough to share their stories, those who have stepped up to support them. Thank you to everyone who is fighting for change. I would also, in closing, I would also like to thank specifically Robert Peace and Rolling Stone Pictures for their media and public relations support, without which we could not have got the community behind us. We also have many other people who we wish to thank, which are posted on the slide. And Mr. Mayor and Council, I look forward to hearing your support for these suggestions.
Thank you very much, Paul. I want to just recognize and thank you and all of the folks that are involved in chat for your advocacy. I feel like it's made a difference. I feel like we're seeing some progress on these issues that we haven't seen in a long time. But I want to recognize people that have been at this work for quite a while. Connie, you have been through SOYA. I want to thank you for all of your efforts through SOYA. I also want to recognize Donna DeSimon of Addictions and Mental Health Advocates for all of her work and that group's work. There's obviously a lot of people have poured themselves into this because they see the need in our community. And as Dr. Hergott correctly points out, I think this issue's affected each of us directly and indirectly. I'm going to save the remainder of my comments for the end of our discussion, but I do want to before I move to comments from councilors or questions from councilors, I do want to recognize Lisa and Connie and Rhonda here with us tonight, and I want to express our deepest condolences for your losses. I can't imagine that feeling of losing a child. And I want to recognize that all the people in the community who have lost a loved one close to them, over the last number of years. As Dr. Hergott points out, there was a report done in 2010, another in 2019. So there's been, this has been a long-standing issue in, across Ontario, but certainly in our community for a number of years now. So I'll reserve the remainder of my comments after council's had an opportunity to discuss this issue or ask questions. Councilors, do any of you have any, okay, I've got a list going then. I'll start with Councilor Bruni because I saw his hand first.
Thank you, and thank you to Dr. Hergott for his presentation. I guess, Dr. Hergott, regarding the full-scale residential withdrawal treatment center, you said we're the only municipality that does not have one. What does the provincial government and especially our member of parliament, Ross Romano, what are they saying to you? I mean, you have direct dialogue with them. Is there anything you can share to tell us? What would the holdback be?
Councillor Bruni, that was residential medical withdrawal, you said?
Yes, residential.
Well, those are questions that I have started asking the hospital. I've had many meetings with Mr. Romano, and he has had meetings with the ministry. I'm not sure. It's up to me to explain what the holdup has been. That may be something that Mr. Romano can explain. There most definitely has been a holdup. The application went in June. It was hung up at the Lynn for quite some time. And my understanding is it really just got to the higher levels of the ministry in perhaps the last couple of weeks. So you are absolutely right. There has been a significant delay in this happening.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll let the other councillors ask questions also.
Councillor Bezumal.
Thank you. It's more comments, and I just want to give a big shout out to all of you for coming together. It's when we all come together, especially with grassroots organizations, that we can really see some change happen. And I'm happy to do what I can in whatever capacity that could be. I also want to take time to really recognize Connie, my new neighbor on Gore Street. I see what Soya does, and we are neighbors. We're in the same building. And I want to let everyone know that Soya takes donations of socks and mitts and hats, and they give out soup every Saturday. And anyone that if they're looking to get involved, I think that's something that we can start. And I remember Luke and I both met Connie and Donna at shortly after our election when we had a open house at the soup kitchen. So really applaud what you ladies have done, and also anything that we can do. I see it every day. We have a lot of people that are needing help that come into Grocer for Good, and my staff are really excellent with them. They are like everybody else. They buy groceries, they need socks, they need help, they just want to chat. They talk about their pets and things like that. So I think that's the key piece is it's we're all human, and it affects every walk of life. And I really want to give kudos to the chief for saying that it's not about culture or socio-demographics. It's about all of us together. So whatever we can do, and happy to be part of that dialogue in whatever capacity that we can do to support that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bezumal. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. I echo everything I've heard so far from my fellow councillors, Dr. Hergott and the other team members. As a registered nurse, I have worked with those that unfortunately have become addicted to drugs and alcohol. So I am quite aware. Also, I do have a family member that unfortunately was addicted. However, I just want to say kudos to everyone that's involved. Dr. Hergott, my first question, please. Wonderful presentation. So what is the next step what is your next step? What's your team's next step? You mentioned about Mr. Ross Romano, but what is on your agenda for the next step so we can become more involved?
Thank you for asking that, Councillor. We've now done our, I guess, our publicity, and we've got the message out. We are moving into action. I'm having a meeting tomorrow night, and I have about a dozen committees now that I want to form, and we're going to move into action. We're going to look into providing harm reduction. I want to have Indigenous relations. We're going to form a youth reach out committee and an Instagram page for the youth, and many, many more things along those lines. I want to look into a safe house, building a place, some place where people have a safe place with supervision while they wait. Chief Ricard and I have actually had some brief discussions about that. And I kiddingly suggested to him that perhaps we could build something at Garden River, a safe place where people could wait. So we have a lot of things now. We're moving forward into action, and we will continue to make noise and in specific areas. I hope that we're able to work with the hospital. I personally, last week, I'm still working in being involved in patient care. I personally had a very devastating experience in the emergency with a young heroin addict who was pregnant, no prenatal care. She had smashed her head open, had got it stitched. There was blood all over her. She had blood on her face and her hair. And I came to see her, and no one had even made an attempt to clean her up. And I did my best, but I could not lead her to a methadone clinic. And I did my best to get her obstetrical care, but quite honestly, I failed. I know she left and nothing was going to happen. So I'm hearing over and over again from parents like Lisa and other people, their children go to the emerge, and that is the door. That is where our opportunity is. And I'd love to be able to work with the hospital and have them listen to what their barriers are. I know they're doing their best, but we need to see how we can get it a continuum back out into the community. I have a crazy idea, like we have a PAC clinic. Well, maybe we can have some kind of follow-up clinic where somebody follows up with these people in a day or two and sees how they're doing and did they get out to a methadone clinic. So we have lots of ideas, Sandra. This is not the end of us.
Okay, thank you. I have another question. Since August, I have also been reaching out to various groups in Sault Ste. Marie and actually throughout Canada to educate myself on what services there are available in our community and across Canada. So I have learned a little bit more about Elliott Lake, and I also learned about Blind River. Are you able to educate me further on, it's my understanding Blind River and Elliott Lake, they do have a residential detox. Is that my correct understanding?
Yes, Elliott Lake has a residential detox, which is actually attached to its residential treatment center. And that's Camilla's. And it has been servicing Sault Ste. Marie for many, many years. And one of my members, Randy St. John, was the EAP at Algoma Steel for 30 years. And they kept a couple beds there. So they've been very helpful to us. And that small community has a treatment center and a detox. Blind River has an Indigenous-based treatment facility. I'm not that familiar, but I do know it is more earth-based, which is what my understanding that the Batchewana Band, when they open their treatment center, it will be more earth-based, but open to everybody if there are beds.
Okay. My third question, in my research, as I mentioned, since August, I've also reached out to a group in Alberta who currently is showing success rates, and they are now helping Winnipeg, the city of Winnipeg, to set up a center. And I'm just out of curiosity, have you and your team reached out to other successful facilities across Canada so we can learn other models that might fit into our community?
Was that models overall or for safe injection sites? I didn't follow that.
Oh, good clarification question. a model for overall?
We haven't at this, well, yes, I should say we have. Vancouver has recently set up a plan such as we're talking about. And I think the mayor has that too. He and I had talked about that. So the city of Vancouver has done it and has a great plan. And a big part of this, and Chief Stevenson is on side with us, is the decriminalization of drug possession. And the drug squad in Sault Ste. Marie, we've met with them. They're not interested in arresting these people. They just want to get the people dealing off the street. And I just spoke Saturday night with friends of ours. He's the former Chief Justice of Ontario, and he was talking about a mental health and addiction court that they run in Toronto. And they look at alternate management for these people rather than putting them in jail. So I'm not sure how I push the judiciary, but that's something else to consider here.
Okay, good. And I agree with you. Another analogy, another example is many, many years ago, our community, many members of our community realized we need a hospice. And the community came together and we, as a community, created a wonderful, wonderful facility called Arch. I strongly feel as you continue to voice your concerns and your team and others in this community, I am confident that we will achieve this goal. The last comment is, Ms. Dr. Hergott, if there's anything I can do, please let me know. I've been in contact with the hospital, with Lisa Case and her team, who are doing a very good job as well. And I'm here, so please, if we can have an offline conversation, I'd appreciate that, Dr. Hergott. Thank you again for coming tonight, and thank you to your team.
Thank you. And I would very much like to take you up on that. And I would like to sit down and meet with Lisa and see what we can work together towards.
I like that. So we'll talk in a few days. Thank you.
Councillor Gardy?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank Dr. Hergott for the presentation and for Ms. Foggia and Rhonda and Connie joining. If I've missed anyone, forgive me. Those are those that I can see on the screen. Dr. Hergott, your group, I think, is going to lend a lot of heft to this lift. As you are aware, this council and a previous council through Mayor Provenzano have been advocating for some of these for these things, for facilities as you referenced, and you know, for whatever reason, it hasn't come through in as timely of a fashion as we want. The excuse from the province cannot be the pandemic, so I'm hopefully they don't use that, because this is an epidemic that has been in existence far prior to what we're experiencing with COVID-19. And there's nothing that really kind of gives emphasis or illuminates, you know, the issue more than those impacted directly from telling their story. And you know, I'm proud to tell you that I know Rhonda quite well. And just for those who don't know Rhonda's story, I'm gonna summarize it real quickly. I want people out there to imagine that they're a parent whose son died because of addiction and an overdose, and then having to be in a position where another of their child comes to them wanting help, and they're not being virtually any help for them in this community. And then, as you mentioned, having to go to press forward on your own to find a private institution and pay tens upon tens of thousands of dollars because there isn't anything else available anywhere. There was no public facility anywhere available to her. So I am, you know, there's no excuse for the lack of the province coming through with this. I really think your efforts are going to kind of get us over the hill. I commend you for it. I know that Mayor Provenzano and all the community partners out there are willing to work with you, and I wish you guys nothing but the best of luck. And like everybody else who I think will say the same as I, you have 11 allies on the table. And best of luck to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gardy. Councillor Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to thank Dr. Hergott for his presentation. And I also want to take a moment to thank those through the video that presented their stories. I don't really think I have the words to effectively express my deep sympathy to you. It's through people like yourselves, though, that share your stories that help shine a light on the real tragedy that we're going through. And this is a disease, and it's frustrating because we could make a difference if we had the tools to do so. And it's particularly frustrating when we hear of smaller communities that have at least some of the infrastructure they need to deal with this. I just wanted to let everybody know, as the other councillors have, that I will support your efforts and support anything that you need us to do. And I volunteer my services as well. But I also want to make one final comment before I hand it back over. And I want the viewing public to recognize their small responsibility in this. This is affecting the entire community. I don't think it's fair for the community at large to say, yes, we understand that people have problems, and yes, we wish that they get the support. I think we all have to take some responsibility in trying to determine what it is we can all do to support a collective effort to get these facilities and the infrastructure that we need. And so I'll leave it at that. This is very, very important. This has a human economic toll in our community. And one of the presenters made the point that this is really an investment, and it is. Because if we could take a big chunk out of this problem, this disease, we as a community collectively will be that much better off. This is a priority, and we need to get it resolved. I know council's very aware of it, and I'm sure that we're all in full support of your efforts. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Councillor Christian. Next, I have Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. First off, again, I just wanted to thank Dr. Hergott and all of the mothers who joined us tonight. I want to commend you all for your grassroots efforts, and I'm very grateful and cautiously optimistic to hear of some of the progress, Dr. Hergott, that you've made in speaking with the province and in being able to have their ear. I know that in our conversations that hopefully you see and understand that you have a willing partner in the city and in the DSAB to do whatever it is in our power there is to do. And at the same time, I guess one of my questions for you is how do you feel about how the provincially based conversations are going? I know that there was an announcement last Friday, and I guess I'm just wondering if you can share with the community if you see that as a positive step and where you see that going for next steps.
Thanks, Luke. I see anything that brings money and help to the community as a positive step. As Mr. Romano himself said to me, it was a small amount of money, but it's helpful. And he and I have talked about his plan for the last several months. He is the Minister of Colleges and Universities, and he very much wants to create an educational center for addiction and research and a center of excellence, which ultimately I think will be helpful down the road. But in the next months or year, the programs are not going to be that helpful. What we need right now are things that will save lives now, like harm reduction. We need to increase our clinic hours and times. There's good people working, but the clinics aren't open every day. Some addicts have jobs, and they can't come to an appointment between 9 and 5, alcoholics and other people. So I think it's a step forward. The last thing we need, as I said in my speech, is we don't need another committee to look into things. We know what the problems are, and it's time to move forward. And I've also spoken with Mr. Sheehan and put him on notice that we need federal help. It's not just a provincial matter, and we want to move forward with a harm reduction site. Mr. Sheehan told me he had spoken with the federal Minister of Health as well about our situation recently. So he as well has given us a letter of support, and we will be working with, it's at all levels of government. It's a responsibility of the council to keep the city safe, but it's not the position of council to provide healthcare. But we need to all work together, and our group has grown organically. It's just happened. It just happened, and as Councillor Hollingsworth said, this community is a good community. We raise money, we build hospitals, we raise money for CAT scans. And I think if we get everybody on the same page and having compassion for these people and not just arresting them and putting them in jail, but let's help them and fix the problem as a community, we will move forward. And that does require all levels of government.
Thanks for that, Dr. Hergott. I definitely agree, and I'm glad that you point out for us and for the community's benefit, you know, that that there are mandated areas of responsibility, and that the city cannot pay for healthcare with property tax dollars. I think that's an important distinction to be made. You know, and as chair of the DSAB, our Social Services Board, I think it's important to point out that even though we can't fund healthcare, we can be a valued team member with the work that your group is trying to put forward. We have leveraged significant investments into our homelessness shelter system. Our staff at the DSAB are living on the front lines of dealing with the symptoms of this epidemic every day. You know, whether it's our staff from housing, our paramedics, even childcare workers, and especially those working in the homeless shelters, they're seeing this problem grow and grow every day. And it's become one of our #1 concerns as an organization, yet it is one of those areas that we don't have the power to directly provide the services that you're advocating for. So I thank you for your advocacy, and I hope that you continue to push for those important resources that our community so desperately needs. And once again, if there's ever anything more that you need in terms of support from the municipality, anything we can deliver, we're happy to help. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke. And just if I could add a point, you and I and Mike Nadeau have met, and we know that there's no fine line between homelessness, mental health, and addiction. There's a huge crossover, and you can't isolate any one. So we look forward. We look forward to working with the new hub center and the bus. And but not all of people with addictions in Sault Ste. Marie are on the street, and there's other addictions that we need facilities to treat: gambling, sex addiction, etc. We need a treatment facility for everybody.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so I have 2 left on my list. I have Councillor Shoemaker who has a question, and Councillor Nero who has a comment.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Dr. Hergott, perhaps Dr. Hergott, if you know the answer. In the early 2000s, there was a campaign to build the new hospital. I believe it was probably spearheaded by the Stewart Area Hospital Foundation, but I know the city played a big role in it. The Stake in the Sioux campaign, I think it was called. Is there the possibility that such a campaign could be initiated in conjunction with provincial funding, obviously necessary, but is there the possibility such a campaign could be initiated to help get over any funding hurdles that there might be?
Thank you. That's a good question. And I don't see any reason why there can't be. It's a matter of priorities. We recently raised money for a new cardiac cath lab when we needed it. We raised money for other equipment. This is a medical disease that is being undertreated and we need resources. A former member of the foundation just told me on Saturday that the hospital sold the 3 houses that were adjacent to the building where Pauline's place and the old detox were. So that money is going to the foundation now from selling those 3 homes. One of the Pauline's place was donated to the hospital, and the old detox was donated by the members of AA to the hospital. So perhaps the money raised by selling those houses might be a good start to a base for building something.
Yeah, thank you. And I question through you, either Mr. White or the mayor on that particular point. Is there land or other, service buildings that the city's got in its stock that could be, offered up as possible solutions to the issue of a physical asset being required?
The CEO would have to answer that.
I'm sorry.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. The city itself does not own that type of asset. There are other assets in the community, and the city is working with Sioux Area Hospital to help identify an appropriate asset for use.
Yeah, and I think, the point being simply that all of council, it sounds like to me, would be behind doing what we can to get the right assets into the right hands for this type of service. So thanks, Dr. Hergott, for your presentation. I know that others have thanked Lisa and Rhonda and Connie for being here, and your bravery in being able to share your story with us is very much so appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Nero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some brief comments as well. Thank you, Dr. Hergott, for your presentation and your support and work on this project. We're all aware we have done, along with the mayor, a lot of work trying to push the province for these facilities for some time. I'm at a loss, as well as all of us, I would believe, why we have not had any response from the province on this so far. But I'm certainly in full support of your plan to move forward on this issue, and full support of anything as we as a council can do to help you on your endeavor to get this going. So thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Hergott, I apologize, Dr. Hergott. I'm going to wrap up here. Before I move into my comments, I just want to point out one I think salient point to this issue of raising funds and the capital you need to construct something. Nissinabee Cree offered $11 million to that effort. So in my mind, the capital was never really an issue. It was always, as I understood it, the operating costs of operating a residential treatment facility that was the impasse. And I don't know that you could ask the community to raise that on an annual basis. But look, first thing we have to do is thank you for your work. It's important work. I know you're taking a leadership role now, but there's a number of citizen leaders in our community that have been doing this work for years and have been speaking up about this issue for years and trying to get some traction for years. I think back in early 2017, I wrote my first letter in support of the residential withdrawal facility for Sioux Area Hospital. And in the fall of 2017, I think then CEO was at City Council, whereby City Council supported it and then sent another letter of support. In the reality of this situation to me is fairly straightforward. We've needed help for a long time. And we have said we need help. And we have asked for that help a number of times. And we have never really received it. And we certainly haven't received the help to the degree that we need the help. So that 2017 proposal went nowhere. And in the summer of 2019, the hospital submitted a a new proposal, which was, in my opinion, a scaled back proposal, which I will say I was very concerned about, because I did not believe that the need from 2017 to 2019 decreased. I still to this day believe that the need is greater. But in any event, I'm not in a position to tell the hospital what it should be asking for and how it should ask. But they made an ask in 2019. And outside of my concerns that, we're not asking for what we need anymore as much as we're asking for what we think the province might approve, that ask went in. And we have not had that ask approved. And I expect maybe we will see that ask approved soon. But the reality is, we will not see the improvements that we need to see in our community until we have the right healthcare available to people who need that healthcare and deserve that healthcare. There was a very important point made during the presentations I want to reiterate. People that have addiction and substance use issues are not criminals. They have an underlying healthcare issue that has to be supported. And I'm proud that the Sault Ste. Marie Police Service does not want to treat them like criminals. The criminalization is in the production of the drugs and the distribution of the drugs. The people who have an addiction issue that are using the drugs should not be treated like criminals. They should be treated like people who need care. And we need to get them care. And we do not have the care available in our community to properly provide for them. And we have with us tonight 3 mothers who have lost children. And they are amongst countless parents and brothers and sisters and grandparents and uncles and aunts and siblings who have lost loved ones. This isn't a partisan issue, and it isn't a political issue. Cities and municipalities need care across this province, and the government should provide care equally across this province. There is no doubt the opioid issue is more acute in Northern Ontario. I've spoken to the Mayor of Timmins. I've spoken to the Mayor of North Bay. I've spoken to the Mayor of Sudbury. I've spoken to the Mayor of Thunder Bay. They are all dealing with the same issues that we're dealing with, and they all need support. But I think our infrastructure here is more inadequate than even the infrastructure in those communities. I agree with Dr. Hergot. We do not need to study this any longer. We understand what is happening. We understand the level of care that's needed, but we need assistance to provide that level of care. And we're doing a lot of good work to move our community forward. You're seeing a lot of productive and positive things happening in our community. But the reality is, until we deal with this substantial issue, we cannot entirely move forward because it is affecting a significant part of our community. So all we can do tonight, Dr. Hergot, is tell you that we're with you.
Thank you.
And we're with your group. And we will continue to work with and support your group. We will work with and support SOYA. We will work with and support all of the different advocacy agencies in our community who are trying to get us the assistance that we need. And I want to say to all the people out there that are struggling that cannot get the health care they deserve, that I'm sorry that we have not been more successful in our advocacy. It has been the greatest frustration of the last, all of the years of my mayoralty, that we have not made more progress in this respect. And I personally take my responsibility for that. Notwithstanding that I might have tried, I have not been successful. And there are people in the community that are having a hard time. And I want them to know that their mayor and their council recognize that. And I want them to know that we're trying. And I want them to know that we believe they deserve health care. And I'm hoping we will see some progress soon to make that come to pass. And we will take all the help we can get. So personally, I support Chad. I support your objectives. And whatever I can do in my capacity as mayor to continue to further them, I will be there to work with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. And I think people have seen that the citizens are coming together. We have hundreds of thousands of views now on our Facebook, and we just need the support of all levels of government. And I do deeply appreciate your time this evening and the very provocative questions that you brought forward.
So thank you, and thank you, Connie. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Rhonda, for sharing your stories.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, we can move to the consent agenda.
Is she going to take me out now, or just stay on there for a second?
They'll take us to
The deputy, yeah. You could sign off if you'd like, Dr. Hergott. Yeah. Yeah, so we are on the consent agenda, council. So, Councilor Shoemaker, you're first.
Question, Mr. Mayor, can we pull point of shame, 6.6?
Yeah, we'll pull it for sure. 6.6, point of shame's pulled.
That's all I was going to ask questions on, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so that's pulled. So Councilor Shoemaker doesn't have anything for consent. Do any of you have anything for consent? Okay, can I have a consent motion? Oh, sorry, Councilor Scott, you have a consent matter?
Mr. Mayor, can I just actually make comments on 6.1?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. So I know we were briefed on this, and I did my comments basically are I reached out after I found out about this to a bunch of people I know out in the affected area, and a lot of them were either in favor of signing this petition, or a lot of them were actually in favor of not signing it, due to many of the reasons actually that were pointed out in the report. So what the underlying thing that I heard from the people who did sign, though, was it wasn't so much they cared about the dollar amount on the taxes. They told me a lot of them were just feeling undervalued, and that's something that that disappointed me as a councillor in this ward. And it's just, I don't know how everyone else felt about seeing that petition, but it kind of lit a spark for me that I feel like I personally need to try a little harder for the west end of the city. And I think that 6.6 actually can tie into this, because a lot of people out in this area have felt, at least the ones that I spoke to who signed the petition, felt that they have been forgotten about almost, or that their dollar isn't going as far as it could for the city as far as the taxes that they do pay. So I just kind of wanted to put a comment out there to that and express that, because that's what I'd heard from a lot of the people that I'd reached out to. So I wanted to make sure that their voices were heard here. And that is the feedback that I got. I'm not sure if any other councillors reached out to anyone or spoke with them, or you yourself, Mr. Mayor, but generally that was the feedback I got. So I just wanted to put that out there for public consumption and for the rest of council.
Thank you. Anybody else in 6.1? Councilor Bruni?
Mr. Mayor, will you be reaching out to Mayor Laming regarding this? Has there been any conversation?
Well, I spoke to him. I spoke to him a number of times.
Yes.
Yeah, I spoke to him a number of times. So.
And
I think the way they are approaching it now is they don't believe anything is going to come to their council. And if something does come to their council, I don't think they see any sense in moving it forward, because it's clear that it would take our cooperation to do so, and they know that's not forthcoming. So I think that the issue is, as far as a annexation of it, that issue is dead.
So just a follow-up. So if there's no conversation from Sault Ste. Marie, this does not move forward, correct?
Yeah, so I had a conversation with Minister Romano and Minister Clark. Minister Clark is the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing.
Mm-hmm.
As council's aware, the concern that we had was that there isn't a mechanism in the legislation that one party could potentially move it forward. Notwithstanding that, I received assurances from the minister that they wouldn't move forward without the cooperation of both parties and on the consent of both parties. And on your direction, because we had already spoken about it, I made it clear to the minister that the city of Sault Ste. Marie would not consent to that or cooperate with the process. So it can't go anywhere without our, based on their representations and their commitment to us, it can't go anywhere without our cooperation. So I spoke to the Mayor Lamming after that, and we had that conversation that it wouldn't go anywhere without us, and he recognizes that we're not going to be on side, so I don't think he would be looking to move that forward in any respect, but I can't speak for him.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for going forward with the communication with Mayor Lammy.
Yeah, no problem, Councilor Bruni. Councilor Gardy, you had your hand up there briefly. Did you want to say something?
Well, just quickly, I was just going to thank you for your efforts over the course of the last little while in kind of clarifying this and flushing this out. I think in conversations I've had with some constituents about this, there were a couple of handfuls that they weren't necessarily sure. Some of them were quite concerned about it, weren't necessarily sure how things would proceed. And I think I thank you for jumping on it quickly and working with Mr. Romano, and Mr. Romano facilitating the meeting with you, Mr. Clark, went a long way to assuaging a number of the concerns. As recently as a few moments prior to this meeting, I got a call from a couple of constituents who were quite happy that this didn't look like it was going anywhere. So thanks for that.
Certainly doesn't look like it's going anywhere. So anybody else in 6.1? Seeing none, I think that's it for consent. Councillor Scott, did you have any other matters on consent? Okay, so we will vote on the consent agenda, then we will move to 6.6, which has been accepted. Madam Clerk?
A motion by Councillors Vezo, Allen, and Bruni resolves that all items listed under date February 8, 2021, agenda item 6, consent agenda save and accept agenda item 6.6 be approved as recommended.
All in favor? Motion is carried. That brings us to 6.6. Councillor Shoemaker, you had your hand up and you were going to speak to this before Councillor Bruni asked it to be exempted. So I'll start with you and then I'll go to Councillor Bruni.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So through you, I guess I'll direct them all to Mr. White, and he can direct them as he sees fit, or Ms. Hamilton Beach, whoever. So first off, how will if the decision is to close the campground or not to renew the lease, how will that affect the day park or the beach?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, I'm going to direct these questions to Ms. Hamilton Beach just because it's her report. And I think most of them will have a level of detail that she can best provide. If there's anything else needed to be clarified, then I'll jump in.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. White, to Councillor Shoemaker. The day park will be unaffected. We will have the provision of porta potties so that washroom facilities will be there. And we will examine the change facilities and making sure that they are certainly safe and can be used by the general public.
Okay, so right now, if I'm understanding correctly, the campground and the day park use the same washroom facilities that are there, but since those will be decommissioned per se, the porta potties will be brought in for the day park users?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, we all use the same well, but there are in fact separate building facilities.
Got you. Okay. So if the campground were to continue if the direction were to continue to operate the campground through this season, is the order that are the requirements that the capacity be maintained at 50%, as was the case last year, still in effect at this point, and is it envisioned that they would remain in effect throughout this summer?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, that 50% usage was strictly due to campers either finding other locations or not using the facility. And we certainly estimate that if not less campers, given the direction tonight, would be using it moving forward. That was not an inflicted limit.
Okay, thank you. If the decision is to cease the operations there at the campground, what's the plan for the property?
through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, we would certainly secure the site in the immediate future. And at this point in time, we would have no definite plans. Anything further obviously would be taken back to council for your decision.
Okay. But I guess we've heard some outreach from other users of the day park. We can be assured, or we can assure the community at this time that the day park is proposed to be continued operations as currently is for the foreseeable future.
You are correct.
Okay.
I think that's an important point. So I just want to reiterate that no decision that we make tonight will affect the day park or access to the day park. None of this discussion or the issue before council, and this is for the general public, not you, Councillor Shoemaker, but none of this is about the day park. The day park is an important park. I think everybody on council recognizes that and wants to preserve it and probably invest in it if we can find those resources. But the reality is this is just about the campgrounds and the trailer park. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. Mr. White, there was a KPMG report completed early last year, I think it was, on core municipal services and where we provide a higher level of service than mandated. Is the campground a core municipal service, or is it a provision of a higher than mandated municipal service standard?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, certainly the operation of a campground is not a mandated municipal service. While there is the odd municipality that does operate campgrounds, it is something that's over and above what would normally be called the traditional municipal services that are provided. So when we look at traditional municipal services in the recreational area, you would think more of swimming pools, municipal arenas, outdoor sports fields, and those type of things, rather than an overnight campground.
Would it be fair to say that this is one of the very few areas where we have a service that is not mandated?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, yes, the KPMG report that certainly reaffirmed that Sault Ste. Marie has a smaller footprint than most regarding municipal services, and we do emphasize more core and traditional services.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hamilton Beach, there's been the suggestion that if we kept the park operating through this season, that would at least give some folks more time to adjust to the pending changes. Is it possible that the campground, could operate without water? Could we shut the water off so that we didn't have to invest money into it and open the campground?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, certainly under OREG 82-20, we were advised in operating last year under the condition that only campsites that provided electricity, sewer facilities, and water facilities to each of the lots could in fact be open.
Okay, and that was a COVID regulation?
This is a COVID regulation.
Okay,
we certainly suspect we will be operating under that as well again this year.
Right. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Fields, if she's on the line, is there potential liability on the council and the councillors personally under the Safe Water Drinking Act if we continue to provide the water as it currently is without upgrading the facilities that are there to meet new standards?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, we're currently under an APH directive under the Small Drinking Water System, which is a regulation under that act. And we're in compliance with that. The regulation or the direction is to not supply drinking water. So we can supply water, but it's not potable water. And we're following that direction. So if we fail to follow that direction, there's a fine that's associated with that, but we are following those directions.
Okay.
Directives.
But if we, if we became aware that people were drinking the water out there, that would change things, would it not?
If we were alerted to that, we would have to make sure that they understood they're not to drink it. But we are following everything that APH is telling us to do. So we're posting the signs. We're doing everything that we're obliged to do.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I do have, just one other question through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure who it's for actually, but is there any liability on the city for loss of revenue to the Lions Club if we, are essentially giving short notice of the change to the operations?
So Councilor Shoemaker, I think the city solicitor can answer that, but I just want to correct you in one respect. The agreements, it's not a matter of short notice. The agreement's expiring, and so there's not a notice provision that we haven't adhered to. It's a matter of the agreement coming to an end. But the city solicitor can answer your question specifically.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Shoemaker, there's nothing in the agreement that talks about an obligation to have a certain amount of money or time. It is a one-year term agreement. So at the end of the term, they would have gotten notice at the beginning of the term that it's a one-year term.
Okay. And is the term up or is it coming up?
It's coming up.
Okay. All right. I have comments, Mr. Mayor, but I'm content to do them now or later, whatever works best.
Well, you ate, how long are your comments? Because you ate up most of your 5 minutes in your questions.
Well, they're, I don't know, 2 minutes.
Let's get through them as quickly as possible so I don't have to come back to you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So my position on this has been fairly consistent since the beginning of our term on council when we initially renewed the campground lease. This place has been great for many residents over many years. And we heard it in the emails that we got over the weekend. People have lots of fond memories of being at the campground. I know a lot of folks very well, and some are like family to me who have camps out there. That said, there's a number of issues at play here. And the biggest one, of course, being the cost that we're being asked to incur to upgrade the water system. And it's, $250,000 or more, and that's to begin with. There are other upgrades that need to be done out there. And the benefit goes to, a couple hundred folks, 120, 150 families made up of a couple hundred, 200-300 people altogether. So it's a lot of money for the benefit of a fairly limited amount of people. If we're going to be asked to put such a substantial amount of money into municipal service, my view is that it should be put into a service that is more broadly accessible to the public, such as the Pointe-aux-Chenes Beach or some other service that benefits the community more widely. So I will be supporting the end of the contract with the Lions Club. That is to say nothing of their years of dedication and commitment to the community. I just believe that we're at a fork in the road, and we're being asked to make a decision that will see us either spend a significant amount of money on the benefits of a limited number of people. My preference would be that we spend that same amount of money on benefits that will affect the community as a whole. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Questions to Ms. Hamilton Beach. I guess I'll get straight to the point. What would it cost to operate the campsite for this one summer coming up? What would be the minimal cost? Would you have that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni. As we have noted in the report, these capital improvements have actually been put off 4 years. We've been trying to come up with Band-Aid solutions. So the capital investment of approximately $275,000, that's what has been estimated by our operator, the PUC and others, as well as operating each year. We are now within the ballpark of a $5,000 to $10,000 operating value.
I'm sorry, 5,000 to 10,000.
Those are our regular operating costs.
Okay.
On top of the 275.
On top of
the 275. the drinking water, for the last 10 years, the campers were not drinking the water because there were signs there that it was only good for gray water, I guess, for washing dishes and doing whatever, but they weren't drinking the water. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, you are correct.
Okay, so I'm just puzzled that I don't think it's fair by we're talking about this now, which is early February, and the campsite will open in early May. And there was very little consultation with the camp owners. As we all know, there's not many campsites around the Sioux area that has availability to absorb these 108 camp lots. I've checked in a few of them, and they're sold right out for the season for next year. The 50%, was that by the Lions Club for occupancy for this past summer? Who put in the 50%? Was that the provincial government?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, I believe that was just the natural usage of the sites. There was no restriction. Obviously, all social distancing and gathering with only your family unit, those types of rules were implemented, but not a capacity limit.
Okay, so there was no capacity. Okay. Just a couple, well, regarding the financing of the Lions Club, what was the Lions Club providing the city or making donations to the city? What were they averaging, $40,000 to $50,000 a year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, it definitely varied year to year, but that is the ballpark. Yes.
That is the ballpark. So if we try to keep this campsite operational for this one more summer, and in the meantime, the campers are well aware that it will close 2022, but in the meantime, we try to do our due diligence by trying to find a business person that would want to operate, and maybe some revenue would come back to our city. I mean, when the campsite's full, you're looking at over $216,000 that the Lions collects, and then you take off all your expenses and stuff. And I know they do distribute close to $40,000 to $50,000 a year to different charities, but I'm sure a business person might want to take over and keep the campsite available for future years. They just like we rent out the John Rhodes, the bar upstairs, or the training center at the John Rhodes. We rent it out. They provide us some type of revenue. Is there some way by keeping this open for 2021, and in the meantime, we can put out some RFPs to see if there's anybody available? And the campers are well aware that in 2022, if we don't have anybody that comes forward that would want to operate it and probably take on some of the expense that the city has to incur with. That's my goal on this. I don't think I would want to support it only because it's such short notice. I'm asking you, PWT, and also PUC to maybe come forward and see if there's an opportunity here to keep this campsite open for this summer alone. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Hollingsworth. I have Hollingsworth, and then just so everybody's aware, because a lot of you had hands up, I have Hollingsworth, Gardy, Lisa Vezuelan, Nero, Christian, Dufour, and Scott. So I've got you all on a list here. So Hollingsworth and Gardy.
Thank you. a lot of my questions were answered already except for two. Through you, your worship, to Mr. White. Just wondering, out of curiosity, was this property donated to the city, or how did we come possess it originally?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, the property was conveyed to us by the federal government. It was formerly Crown land.
Okay, okay. And my second question, just clarification to, through your worship, to Miss Susan Hamilton Beach. You made a comment on the day park, which is a wonderful asset benefit to our community. And I understand that we're going to have porta potties. The water to wash hands, is it running water, or can you just help me understand?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, there would be no running water facility as per a typical washroom facility. The porta potty would be used.
Okay, thank you. And through your worship to Mr. Ver, just to pick up on Councillor Bruni's question, up to this point, has there been any sense that other private businesses may be interested in purchasing this property, and or have you and your team started to look at reaching out to some private businesses that may want to? Because it's my understanding there's some other private campgrounds close to this one, just out of curiosity.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, no, there have been no businesses that came forward expressing any interest in the property, and we are not reaching out to any businesses at this time, given the status of the property.
Okay, and through your worship to Mr. Malcolm White, just can you give us a thumbnail idea how many municipalities may own campgrounds? Just a ballpark grass figure for Ontario. Any idea?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, I don't really have that information at my fingertips. Certainly there are not many that run municipal campgrounds, and where they do, they've generally inherited them on a historical basis as their boundaries have expanded.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, do you want comments as well right now, or save our comments?
No, we'll take your comments and we'll move on. So while we're at you, let's finish up.
Okay, thank you. So my comments are, we live in a beautiful community. We are close to other wonderful parks, private and also provincial parks. I'm happy that the day park, the beach, will still be run. And my other comment is that I personally wish that we would basically close this down, not so soon, but to let one more summer happen for potential private buyers, private individuals that may be interested in purchasing hypothetically in the future. So Councillor Bruni made some good points, and I do like his ideas. Thank you.
Okay, so we have Councillor Gardy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ms. Hamilton Beach, just a point of clarification. Did you say, Ms. Hamilton Beach, that there were only 50% or so capacity last summer because it was not due to COVID-19? It was simply because the demand wasn't there? Is that what I heard you say?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy, that's certainly my understanding. We had a bit of a late start due to water issues and COVID regulations, and the 50% capacity is what settled out.
Okay, thanks. I'm hearing some different things from people who have places out there, so I'd like to get a bit of clarification on that if we're not 100% on it. But thanks for answering the question with the information you have at hand. I think we're losing sight of the fact that of this benzene situation, Mr. Mayor, and I'm just going to ask a question through you to either Mr. White or Ms. Hamilton Beach. How long has the city known about the contamination out there? And what, if any, efforts have been made with, negotiating, I guess it would be with Transport Canada, as to coming up with some sort of remedy for it? Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy. With contaminants in the water, I think that was first detected back almost 20 years ago. It was monitored in around 2007. The contaminants from the airport area had gotten to a level that was concerning enough that APH directed us not to, we could still provide the water for other uses, but it couldn't be used as potable water, that is drinking water. So that's since about 2007. Certainly in my familiarity with this issue over the past few years, there have been a number or continuing negotiations and discussions with Transport Canada as how to deal with the situation and how they would propose to mitigate it. Those discussions haven't resulted in anything material to date, other than them adding some filtration to the system at one point and contracting with PUC themselves to be an operator for the site.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. White, it doesn't seem that there is any type of remedy. Like, is there a remedy that you guys are aware of? And or does Transport Canada not really willing to take care of the mess that they've created, in your opinion?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy, I would characterize it as there would be remedies available. Is there a remedy that the city and Transport Canada could agree upon to have put in place right now? No.
Over the course of the last several years, has anybody at the city solicited the assistance of MP Sheehan in dealing with the Ministry of Transportation on this file?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy, yes.
So thank you. I appreciate that. I just, I just think that, I don't want to say dropping the ball is the right word, because there have been efforts, but there hasn't been the attention needed to be paid at that facility for the better part of 20 years, as far as I'm concerned. And I'll take responsibility for being a councillor the last year and a half or two. I just think a lot more could have been done to pay attention to that, which I believe is an asset. And I really don't understand why the federal government isn't. There's a new Minister of Transport, Minister Algabra, who I know Mr. Sheehan is close to. You might want to try again moving forward, because this, I don't know what we would possibly do of any benefit to anybody with that property if it's contaminated and you can't use the water. The problem we're faced with is we have infrastructure that doesn't deliver water, and if we were to fix it, the water it would deliver would be contaminated. Is that my understanding, Ms. Hamilton Beach? Is that a fair synopsis of the challenge right now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy, you are correct. It would remain non-potable until the next part of the solution would come forward by Transport Canada.
Thanks. So
you're on mute, Councillor Gardy.
Councillor Gardy, you're on mute now.
I'm not in favor of moving forward with the park this year. For the simple fact that we need to ensure that it's safe. We can't ensure it's safe right now, and I'm concerned about that. I think I think it's important that we do what we can through Transport Canada and any efforts that we can moving forward to make sure that that property is of benefit to the community on a go forward basis. Do we extend the day park to the whole expanse of the property if that were to ever get remedied, so it's the benefit of the whole community? Potentially. Could we find a private operator to modernize the park and make it a place that locals can enjoy, and others from other parts of the province or the United States could come and benefit from? Potentially, I think that's a good idea. I'm not really in favor of selling it for private lots, to be honest with you. I think it's that's a bad benefit. But moving forward, I can't support it, the use of it this year, for the sheer fact that it isn't safe. And I'd also just I'd also kind of suggest that, I appreciate that the Lions Club is going to lose some necessary revenue. I don't know if we could do anything to help them out because they do provide a lot of good work in our community. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so council, as we just move forward on this, I just want to remind everybody, the decision before you today isn't about anything other than whether or not we extend the Lion Club lease at the end of its term. So there's no discussion about selling this property for lots. There's no discussion about selling this property. It is a matter of, are we going to extend the Lions Club lease? If we are going to extend it, notwithstanding what people might want to do to try and get it to go by in a shoestring, staff is telling us that we need to invest this money this year, and they need to find the capital for it, and they'll cancel another capital project. So that's a decision before you. So if you can limit your questions and your comments to the actual critical issue before council, we appreciate it. Councillor Vezo-Allen.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Hamilton Beach. Ms. Hamilton Beach, we have a capital budget, and items are always prioritized at budget time and move forward. Knowing that the pressure tanks, the comfort stations, and the programming logic controller, which are very pricey, were necessary for the safe operation of this facility, why were they not prioritized in terms of capital budget since, from my understanding, since 2012?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen. Staff was provided the direction previously that this site was in fact to be basically no expense to the taxpayers of the city of Sault Ste. Marie, or very minimal money spent at this location. So although estimated at this point in time and certainly necessary, that was certainly the direction as we understood.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Hamilton Beach. I'm just going to close with a comment, and I certainly echo, I think, Councillor Gardy's sentiments that it is not safe. So I think due to the unknown realities of the upcoming COVID season, we have no idea if we're going to be allowed to open campgrounds. We don't have confirmation. The infrastructure needs that are upwards of $275,000, and that's just an estimate for such a small portion of our community to enjoy it. I think that's being irresponsible as a councillor to approve that expenditure. I think we have lots of other capital needs that need to come forward that help the greater community. So at this point, I'm not going to support opening for a season. And really, due to the health and safety, we're not compliant with the TSSA in terms of the pressure tank. We have contaminated water. I don't feel comfortable with having people camp there with inadequate facilities, especially in terms of a comfort station, especially if we're having to deal with social distancing. So at this point, I don't support with us moving forward in extending the lease, but certainly keeping the day beach available and having the porta potties, I think will actually service our community a little bit better, because it is quite a hike to get to the comfort stations for the day use beaches. And I would like to recommend that we look at what are our options in terms moving forward, because this is a community asset and something that I think we need to keep available for our entire community in a safe manner. That's it, Mayor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Vezo-Allen. Councillor Nero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions for clarification. Ms. Hamilton Beach, I think you said if we close the campground that we would secure the site. Could you explain that? Does that mean there's no access to that part of the grounds at all?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, certainly while we had trailers stored there, we would ensure their security as best as we possibly could, and we would maintain the property as per property standards that we would expose to any other property owner to.
So once the RVs are removed from the property, do we envision that piece of property becomes an extension of the day park that's being used right now?
Again, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero. As for that next step with use, certainly any major decisions would come back to Councillor for, in fact, their decision.
Okay, and just one final question. If we do decide tonight to close this campground, do we have an allotted time, or how much time would we give the owners of the RVs, let's say, to remove their vehicles or their RVs from the property?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, certainly we would be very flexible. From our perspective, we would work through this season if storage and or that transfer is required.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton Beach. Mr. Mayor, just brief comment. I think, I'm with the other councillors that have commented, primarily based on the water issues that we can't seem to resolve with Transport Canada. I just don't believe that we can continue to keep the campground operational. And I can't see it happening to extend it for a 1 year period. If we have to spend some money to keep it going for 1 year, then we should be looking at getting the value out of that money. So 1 year could move into 2, into 3. But if we don't solve the water issue, I just don't see it going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my only question, all my other questions were answered. I had probably about 6 or 7 of them. Through you to Ms. Hamilton Beach, since we extended the agreement for 1 more year from last year, have we had any meaningful conversations with the Lions Club since then?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, we have met once with the Lions Club following the season, and of course by regular means, emails, etc. And that would be typical. We would be mounting up communication as per commissioning at this point in time if we were operating.
Okay. I think all my other questions were asked and answered, so I'll just offer a quick comment. That's one of these issues where a few in the community, should we decide to close it, will be impacted. And I think everybody on council appreciates that type of impact. We know it's going to impact them in a negative way. I certainly want to commend the Lions Club for their efforts over the years. They're obviously an important service group in our community. And through this campground, they were able to raise some funds. But it's been pointed out that, we really need to balance the needs of the whole community. We're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, or would be required to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to support a small group in our community. And I think Councillor Vizualan pointed out that it would be irresponsible. As much as I personally would like to be able to see these families continue to enjoy that property, it really would be irresponsible on my part to support a couple $100,000 investment to keep it open. We're charged with what's doing best for the community, and that really isn't it. I don't think that we should be in the campground business. I do believe that property should be used as a campground, but we'll save that discussion for a later date. And the other issue that we have to consider is that the Lions Club has, we've worked through the Lions Club. We really have an issue going forward about how we're going to be dealing with other service agencies. We're supporting this one. It's a valuable group in our community, but so are others. So I really think it makes sense now to end it. I know that Councillor Bruni and I several years ago asked for a report on the feasibility of this campground. And I think council of the day and this council have done our best to support their efforts, but it's come to a point now where the cost to maintain it is just exceeds our needs. And I think it's time that we end it. So I will support the closing of the campground.
Councillor Dufour. Thank you, Councillor Christian. It was 2012 you brought that motion, I believe.
Yeah.
Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. All my questions have been asked, and I think all my comments have been very well stated by my peers. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Dufour. Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A bunch of my questions have been asked, but not all of them, actually. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Hamilton Beach. I think you should be able to answer this, I hope. If we did spend the 275,000 estimate, of course, that's approximate, how long would those improvements last? Do you have an estimate?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Scott. This tank has in fact lasted, I believe, in the ballpark of 40 plus years. So it would certainly be a long-term part of our infrastructure. But being that there has been very little capital invested in the site, there could be another item that comes along. I'm not sure if that is what you're asking, but.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So the way I'm looking at that personally, and I'm shocked that no one else has even considered asking, was that's a relatively low amount of money to spend for a 40-year, hopefully it lasts that long, improvement, in my opinion. I know that this campground has been a big impact for a lot of people throughout the community, and I think that that's a relatively small amount of money to spend for potentially years of more service. I know some of the other councillors have gotten hung up on the water issue for the drinking water, but it's been like that for the past, 10 years or so that we've discussed. People have been out there. We've been operating this park in that way. So the concerns with safety are, to me, I mean, that's 10 years too late in that matter. And growing up, I know I've camped in many places where there was no drinking water. So that part isn't, and it obviously doesn't bother the folks that have been camping there. I'm not going to support this, and I'm well aware that the rest of council, it sounds like, will, but I think that this is just another thing that we could easily spend 275,000. And sure, it may sound like it's not going to impact many of the city, but it will. And I know that this council, myself included, have approved projects that have been more expensive for, I would argue, less of a benefit to the community. So personally, I would support this. And I think that we should continue to operate this campground. I know that the Lions Club does a great job. I will admit, Councillor Christian was correct. It's kind of tough choosing which organizations and supporting which and working with whatever. And I understand that point, that makes sense. But this is a longstanding relationship that I wish to continue. And I hope that the rest of council could see it that way, even at the very least, if we fought for that last year. But in my opinion, I think that this is money well spent for the community. And I do think that a lot of people, not only just in the West End, but the rest of the city would actually gain benefit from it. And those are my thoughts. That was my question. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I've been through the whole list now. So we have the motion before us. Madam Clerk, have you read the motion? I'm not going to reiterate. Yeah, I'm not going to, for myself, I'm not going to reiterate any of the comments that many of my colleagues on council have made, because I think they articulate my perspective, so I won't repeat. I often appreciate when you folks don't repeat. So, Madam Clerk, if you could read the motion, please.
Motion by Councillors Dufour and Nero. Resolved that the report of the Director of Public Works dated February 8, 2021 concerning Pointe de Chenes Campground 2021 season be received, and that the campground closure based on the capital improvements necessary to comply with the Technical Standards and Safety Authority and the ongoing operational challenges due to this pandemic, as well as ongoing water quality issues, be approved.
All in favor?
And it is open for voting.
Open for voting. I can't, let me just. So all in favor? Madam Clerk, I don't see the whole screen here, so you're going to have to, for some reason.
I've got Councillor Gardy in the affirmative. I don't have a vote for Councillor Hilsinger.
It's Councillor Hollings. It's not on my screen.
Yeah, none of us have it on our screen, so we're going to do this again by hand because none of us have it on our screen. All in favor? Okay, opposed? So opposed, you have Hollingsworth, Bruni, and Scott. The remainder are in favor.
Most of those did come through on the electronic vote, so I don't know what, but that carries then 8-3.
So thank you, Council. I would like to just make Some brief remarks to the Lions Club, who have done great work in our community for years. We appreciate that work, and we're certainly, interested in having conversations with you about the effect that this will have on the Lions Club and how we might support you in the interim on a going forward basis. So thank you for the efforts you've made for years on behalf of the community. Madam Clerk, that brings us to 7.8.1, I believe.
That's correct. The Environmental Sustainability Committee, motion by Councillors Bezo, Allen, and Nero, resolved that Pedro Antunes be appointed to the Environmental Sustainability Committee from February 8, 2021 to December 31, 2022.
Okay, Council, do we have any questions or comments on this? Councillor Dufour?
Just a quick comment, just very pleased that staff was able to bring this back so quickly. I've always really appreciated communicating with Dr. Antunes via email about different environmental issues in the city, and I think he'll be a great asset to the committee.
Yeah, Pedro's great. He's a great guy. He's got a lot of skill, a lot of knowledge, a lot of intelligence, and happy to see him there. So all in favor? Carried.
And under agenda item 7.8.2, Councillor Scott had been nominated to the Algoma University Board of Governors in January, and evidently he sits in his personal capacity on the Sioux College Board, so is in conflict there. So Councillor Gardy has indicated an interest in the nomination, and I have a motion by Councillors Dufour and Bruni, resolved that Councillor C. Gardy be nominated to the Algoma University Board of Governors from February 8, 2021 to December 31, 2022.
All in favor? Congratulations, Councillor Gardy. That brings us to section 8.
Under agenda item 8.1, small business in COVID, a motion by Councillors Shoemaker and Hollingsworth, whereas the City of Sault Ste. Marie endorses the proposal of the City of Thunder Bay to take a regional approach to allowing small businesses to open in areas of the province less severely affected by COVID-19. And whereas the City of Sault Ste. Marie endorses the following resolution, which was also passed by the City of Thunder Bay. Be it resolved that the provincial government be requested to revise the rules for areas in Stage 1 under Ontario Regulation 8220, lockdown, to address the inequity created between small businesses required to close and businesses permitted to open and continue sales, to avoid unfair competitive advantage between businesses, and to provide consistency with continued effective health risk management in consultation with public health. Further, be it resolved that the provincial government be requested to revise the physical distancing protocols to require capacity limits based on a per square meter basis for all businesses, including restaurants, which are currently subject to a hard capped occupancy limit regardless of business size or capacity, based on the current provincial reopening framework subject to consultation on public health best practices. And that the City of Sault Ste. Marie calls on the province to partner with municipalities to pilot unique or additional parameters and programs with our local business community that may be key to offering a safe consumer and employee experience, so that businesses can remain open and viable while recognizing the unique makeup of local communities. And that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Associate Minister of Small Business and Red Tape Reduction, the Minister of Finance, the Ross Romano, Minister of Colleges and Universities and MPP for Sault Ste. Marie, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and the Northern Ontario Large Urban Mayors.
Okay, Councillor Shoemaker, do you want to speak to that motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a motion that my friend Bill Morrow in Thunder Bay has passed at his council table, as well as other municipalities that make up the Ontario Large Urban Mayors Association. So I had picked up on it, reading a story in the Thunder Bay News, spoke to Mayor Morrow from Thunder Bay, and he had been enthusiastic about other municipalities following Thunder Bay's lead there to pass this motion. Really, we passed something somewhat similar. I think it was May or June of last year. Councillor Hilsinger, I believe, brought that motion, really asking for the province to treat areas with lower case numbers differently than areas with higher case number, all the while basing it on the best medical evidence that can be put forward and that is available, but not to simply treat every region of the province of the same in determining what can be closed and what can be open, and how the limits on that are applied. So just seeking, a collective voice, if we could put it that way, to advance these issues between Thunder Bay, ourselves, and some other municipalities that have passed this, so that we can, hopefully benefit from our good work as a community in keeping our case numbers down. Still important, as you and I have discussed today and over the weekend, Mr. Mayor, for the municipality to continue to push the message that staying home if you're not required to go out is the most important thing that you can do to protect yourself and your community. Wearing a mask, washing hands, social distancing are all very important in stopping the spread of COVID. I would just note that I spoke to both Minister Romano and to Terry Sheehan today on this issue. This is not obviously the only issue that small businesses are facing. I know that there's some, we saw in the news today that there was some glitches with applications for, small business loans, that there are eligibility issues with small businesses trying to apply for those loans if they have just started up in the last year or so and don't have the history to be able to show loss of revenue from past years. This is simply one of the ways, I think, in which we can draw the attention of the provincial government to an area where they need to be paying attention. And I think that, from my discussions with Minister Romano today, they're happy to listen. They're happy to hear us out on this. So hopefully us in Thunder Bay will have their ear in pushing this message collectively. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, do we have any comments from the seconder in the motion?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Your Mayor. I think it's fair to say small businesses are the backbone to our economy, basically to most economies across Canada, small, large, small business. Small business and medium-sized enterprises give 9 out of 10 Canadians in the private sector their jobs. Small businesses alone provide 70% of all jobs in Canada. Because of the small businesses, they allow support of other small businesses. We all know small businesses give back to their communities by charitable donations, by hiring co-op students, by basically just providing jobs to all demographics. So it has been a struggle for our small businesses here in our community. All of us council have heard from small businesses through emails and telephone calls. And so, yes, this was discussed back in the spring by Councillor Hilsinger. It's time to again reiterate this to our government. The last piece I just want to mention is we have learned a lot since the pandemic has happened. We've been in this for a year now. Going with public health, small businesses, council, we have learned a lot. I hope that in the this summer, when the vaccine is available, that we all can sit down as a council with Algoma Public Health to jointly create a new community pandemic plan that looks at what we have learned and our concerns, and maybe establish a new plan so that in the future, heaven forbid, if we have a pandemic again in the future, that a new plan is more suitable for our community, for areas that may not have large spikes. Yes, we have to be safe as a community, but again, if our numbers are reasonable, then why can we not be more open-minded, work closely with Algoma Public Health to make sure that small businesses and our economy and their needs are met. So please note that I'm hoping that in the summer, a resolution, perhaps by myself or a joint resolution, can be put forward that we redo our pandemic plan to include these needs. Thank you.
Council, do we have any other comments on this motion? So we have Councillor Scott and Councillor Gardy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I just have a quick question that maybe I can ask Councillor Shoemaker. So today, I know that the provincial government announced some more reopening guidelines that actually kind of address sort of this. And I was just wondering if you can clarify the difference between what his idea was with this motion and what those new guidelines outlined.
Councillor Shoemaker?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I submitted the motion before today's announcement. Obviously, it was last week sometime. But I think the announcement today addresses a lot of what's being asked for in this, other than I think the capacity requirements for per square footage. I think those are issues where we can still work with small businesses to, obviously if you've got a restaurant the size of Giovanni's, that could sit probably many more people safely than you could in your typical Tim Hortons. So I think things like that need to be looked at, and it all has to be, of course, based in the medical evidence that's available. And the situation of the community specifically.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Gardy?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I respect the spirit of the motion, and I recognize that small businesses are the backbone of our economy, not only locally, but across the country. I got a couple concerns. One is I am of the opinion that that this has been prolonged to the degree that it has because of fits and starts at the provincial level, because of a lack of consistency and clarity, which has ultimately hurt the small businesses more than had we kind of locked down seriously early on in this and got things under control. I don't agree that restaurants should revise physical distancing protocols to require capacity limits based on square footage of restaurants. They're congregate settings. This is a virus, especially the variants that are of aerosol in nature. People in restaurants, are often there for a few hours at sometimes. And we know that an exposure of 15 minutes or longer is considered a close contact. So I can't support it for that sheer fact. I just wish, rather than these fits and starts, that the province would just move forward with a clear and concise plan. This sort of echoes that, and I can't support it for that reason, but I commend Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Hollingsworth for putting it forward. Thanks.
Any other comments, Council? So I would just, I'm going to wrap this up then, because it gives me an opportunity to speak about kind of where we're at. I want to get into kind of, well, look, what, I'll say this. Earlier today, I read a piece of information from somebody I've been following who's putting out really good data on COVID, and I'm just going to read it. And they said Simcoe Muskoka, which is a region, like a health unit region like Oklahoma Public Health. So Simcoe Muskoka is reporting 110 new cases since Friday, and says it has 36 more B1117 cases since Friday, awaiting 13 additional screenings on that. So I want just to pause and think about that. 110 cases in one health unit from Friday to Monday reported. And so the reason why I want to make that point is I want to make that point to our community that this can turn really quickly. And although a number of the cases, I think we've had at least 9 cases reported over the weekend here, and only 1 in Sault Ste. Marie, the remainder in the rest of Algoma. Notwithstanding that, we've been doing a good job in curbing our numbers in Sault Ste. Marie. It could turn really quick. And the variants appear to be much more contagious, which create that much more risk in congregate settings. But this motion, as I understand the spirit of it, and Councillor Shoemaker can correct me, it is really to lobby for fairness and how small businesses are treated relative to, say, maybe large big box stores. Like, you can go shopping in Walmart, but you can't go shopping.
It's not how it reads.
A mom and pop shop downtown. So, I want to say to the community that, notwithstanding the fact that we are looking at opening things up and things will be opened up, Councillor Gardy makes a really important point, which is that our economy won't get going until this is behind us. And we can't have these fits and starts where we open and we close and we open and we close. And that's probably the worst thing for us. But the reality is all we can each do as residents and citizens is exercise control over our own actions. Because we don't control the decisions that are being made and the rules that are being set at the provincial level. But we can control our own actions. And by controlling our own actions, we can help keep ourselves and our community safe. So I'd really encourage everybody in our community to continue to follow public health advice. Minimize social interactions with those outside of your household. Physical distance, that means keep 2 meters between you and anybody who isn't in your household. Wear a mask when you're inside a building or inside any kind of public spaces. Practice really good hand hygiene. If you don't feel well, don't go to work. If your kids don't feel well, don't send them to school or daycare. Make sure you get COVID tested, and make sure you keep track of your contacts. In the event that you do test positive, we can track down all the people that you may have interacted with. I will and can get behind the spirit of treating our small businesses with fairness and equity, but I want to really encourage the community to do what they can to help slow the spread of the virus. If the variants catch on in Sault Ste. Marie, they will spread quickly. We know the variants are now close to Sault Ste. Marie. They have tested and found the variants in communities that are close to us. So now is the time to really make sure we recommit to the public health advice and stay diligent. Thank you. So we have the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Take us to agenda item 11, consideration and passing of bylaws. I have a motion by councillors Dufour and Bruni. Resolved that all bylaws under item 11 of the agenda under date February 8, 2021 be approved.
All in favor? Motion's carried.
I have a motion to go into closed session. The motion by councillors Dufour and Bruni. Resolved that this council move into closed session to discuss one item concerning the disposition of land and one item subject to third-party confidentiality. Further be it resolved that should the said closed session be adjourned, the council may reconvene in closed session to continue to discuss the same matter without the need for a further authorizing resolution.
All in favor? See you in closed, council.
I have a motion by councillors Bezo, Allen, and Nero. Resolved that this council now adjourn.
All in favor? Motion's carried.